Welcome to another edition of the Injury Prevention Academy, brought to you by DORN Companies. For over 20 years, DORN has been the nation's leading wellness-based pain management and injury prevention company. Through our customized ergonomic education, training, and tech solutions, DORN has helped nearly 120,000 employees over that time. With an annual ROI of nearly 600%, we have saved employers over $100 million in workers' comp and healthcare costs. I'll be your host, Cheryl Roy, and we will be diving into the various facets of all things safety in the working environment. Welcome, Charles. How are you today?
I'm well, Cheryl. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm going to jump right into this. Can you start by sharing your journey in the field of EHS from working with your dad at the age of 13 to your role as the VP at Bolthouse Farms?
Absolutely. I'll try to do the redacted version. When I was in high school, my dad was a generalist in a series of hospitals and nursing homes, which really means he took care of asepsis, bacteria control, oversaw the laundry activity, took care of all the emergency response protocols, hazardous chemicals, et cetera. So hanging around him, I kind of developed an affinity for all things safety, so to speak. And
Sure.
He started me out actually with a 13-inch lawnmower mowing the grass of about this 3.5 to 4 acre property. So I would have an appreciation for work and want to come and do something on the inside.
Wow, how long did that take you to mow?
Sometimes it would take me all week, and it was by design. And in fact, it felt like when I finished mowing, it'd be time to start over again. But
Oh, I bet.
he had a great strategy in mind because mowing grass with a small lawnmower, that much grass in the Texas heat would be enough to convince you might want to do something else. So
That's character
did that.
building.
Yep, absolutely. Did that for a while. Graduated from high school, went to college and worked with my dad part-time while I was in college. He continued to remind me of the value of a degree and a professional career. Finished up there, did some odds and ends, worked as security for some retail stores, different things when I graduated, but really started my professional career when I started to work for Oscar Mayer. And so when I started as a safety coordinator, kind of got into it, excelled there, left Oscar Mayer, went to the Procter & Gamble company, really Folgers Coffee, which is a division of Procter & Gamble.
Sure.
Worked there for a while, have the unique distinction of being the first environmental health and safety technician of Procter & Gamble. I actually helped write the job description, and my boss at the time, the VP of HR, commissioned me to help with it, actually accepted with few edits the job description that I created for the position. Shows how much I didn't know with my luck. So did that, worked there for a while, spent some time with the H.J. Heinz company, left H.J. Heinz, started with ConAgra Corporation, did some time at ConAgra. That was farming, agriculture, operations, huge company. Really enjoyed my time there, learned a lot. Left there and went to the Gannett Company, that's newspapers. And it was everything from newspaper reporting overseas to keeping people safe as they're filming out on the highways, wrecks, fires, et cetera, to the safety associated with 100-ton presses, printing newspapers every day. Whole thing about that particular business is they produce a new product every day. And I found that very exciting because it was always dynamic, always something happening. Maintenance was always at a height. Innovation was always at a height. So I really enjoyed that.
Ever-changing.
Yeah, ever-changing. Really enjoyed my time there. Left there and was recruited to the Ahold Corporation, where I became the Senior Director of Risk Management. Ahold is a Netherlands-based company with U.S. operations. And so learned a lot about risk management, risk financing, et cetera, risk transfer when I was with the Ahold Corporation, which has helped me since then. And moved on from Ahold, and my career just kind of advanced from there. I started consulting on a full-time basis when I left Ahold because that was the plan. My
Sure.
son and I had developed a plan, and we were going to work together. He was going to school to get his degree in business and economics, and I had the safety expertise. So we were going to open a risk management consulting company. Unfortunately, he passed away in
Oh,
May of 2007. He got hurt in a motorcycle accident in January 2007 and passed away in May of 2007. The following year, he would have
I'm
graduated,
so
and that's when we
sorry.
were going to start. Thank you. That's when we were going to start the consulting company. And so, kind of felt obliged to start the consulting company anyway. So I went out on my own and was favored. I reached out to some of the presidents and EVPs, et cetera, that I had done work for, and they were gracious and kind to give me opportunities. And then I got called to come and look at a facility in Bakersfield, California, actually with the Bolthouse Farms company. One of my friends was the general manager, says, hey, and could use some help. Came out, did some consulting for them for a couple of years. They decided to get rid of the consultants, and then I started working for them full time. Few years later, the Campbell Soup Company came in and the bought the Bolthouse Farms operation. Ran it for a few years, and that didn't work out too well. And a group of investors, including our previous CEO, purchased the business back, and then called me back, said, hey, we're putting the band back together. We'd like you to come and run our EH&S and risk management operations. And since October of 2021, that's what I've been doing. So I'm old. I've done a lot of stuff, but I wanted to take the redacted version and share the short version with you. So that's kind of my run up to where I'm at now.
That's a lot. You had a very impressive career.
Thank you.
It really does sound like family has been a wonderful influence on you, from your father to you, to your son. Again, my
Absolutely.
condolences. I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, well, with this immense experience that you have, what would you say that overall these years, what are the top 3 skills that make a great EHS professional in today's changing landscape?
Yeah, great question. I think, Cheryl, it starts with broad-based subject matter expertise. I think that's required, including proficiency in regulatory compliance. There is a misnomer that EH&S management or risk management is all compliance. It's really not. It's business
Right.
management, because there are several aspects of EH&S and risk management. And so you got to be technically competent in those disciplines. I think that's number one. Number two, I think you have to be process oriented. I
Oh,
think
sure.
process management is key, because you need a management system or a structured approach that fosters management by objectives in order to improve any business process, whether it's EH&S or quality or whatever it happens to be. And so I'm a proponent of having a management system or a process management system, and using processes to manage and control the environment. EH&S management is a process like quality, like
Sure.
operations, and so it has to be managed like a process versus a program. I tell people sometime when I'm talking, the difference between a process and a program is within a process, there's connectivity. This leads to that, this supports that, this enables that. In a program, you could find yourself doing one-offs. For example, you could implement a bloodborne pathogen program,
Mhm.
and that would take care of bloodborne pathogens, but it would not address respiratory issues, for example. So
Sure.
if you use a management process, you're going to have a more holistic view of what the objective is. And then that's going to ensure that you have a more rounded, all-inclusive, comprehensive approach to management. Now, that was a long, drawn-out answer, but that's those are the 2 top ones. And then I think the third one has to be collaboration and communication. To accomplish anything in any aspect of business, you got to be a good communicator, and you have to be collaborative. But I think the EH&S practitioner has to be a skillful collaborator and a skillful communicator, because in most production environments or operational environments, EH&S is seen more as a regulatory requirement versus a business management objective.
Mhm.
And to those of us who have to manage it, who have to get a seat at the table to be effective, we've got to be collaborative enough, and we got to make sure that we're making safety a part of the daily priorities of the business, so to speak. And so as such, collaboration and communication allows me to be more of a partner than a participant in the process.
So that actually poses an interesting question I have for you with your few comments that you just made regarding a process versus a program. You use the word collaboration a lot, which I find a wonderful word to use because it seems more just as it is collaborating, where you've got more insights, more input from all different levels, where it's not just here's a requirement that you have to abide by, where it seems almost like lecture hall or one-sided. Collaboration being getting all involved. I would like to ask, does that mean getting info from workers and employees all the way down to upper management to up to you, where you keep everybody in the loop so the process does take off in a more effective manner versus, again, having just like a program that slash or just a requirement? I feel like the personitude of this is what really comes into play.
Yes, and yeah, that's a good description. I like to think about it of using a top-down approach at the same time using a bottom-up approach. The bottom-up approach is having the employees involved. It really goes, my experience, Cheryl, it really goes to having people understand the logic behind what you're asking them to do. What's in it for me, or why are you asking me to do this? If you just dictate or lecture to people, they'll do what you request them to do as long as you're looking at them and monitoring them. However, if you educate them to why it's important and develop an expectation that they're going to carry that out because it's to their benefit and to the benefit of their longevity and the company, et cetera, then accountability becomes much more easy to manage because they understand the why. They understand what's in it for them. And when people understand the why they're doing it and what's in it for them, they're much more eager. They buy in much quicker. They will actually take ownership of the process. And so that's kind of the bottom up approach. And then you have to do the same thing from the top down, because at the top, the executives are looking at profit and loss. And because EH&S is not a product that we're putting into a bag or we're putting into a box or we're shipping, although there should be some EH&S in every truck that leaves the factory. It's a peripheral discipline, and you've got to have vice presidents of operation, you've got to have directors of operation, plant managers, et cetera, understand the same thing. What's in it for me? Or why are we doing this? Over and above, OSHA says we have to. So the cop approach won't get it, but the partner approach will get it. And what I've discovered in my years of management is when you can communicate with executives the why and the what's in it from them in business terms, speaking particularly to cost benefit analysis, profit and loss impact, return on investment, they're much more open to receiving what you got to say, and they're far more open to giving you a seat at the table because what you're talking about is a business impact versus a peripheral aspect of business.
Right. So at DORN, I know a lot of our sites, when we go on, we've had some discrepancy where it's, the employees are being policed to some degree, where it's kind of like, your parents are walking by and all of a sudden you sit up straight and you start doing things properly, but having it more, again, as you said, the accountability of the communication and the why, and it's a benefit for everybody to be successful in what they're doing. I feel like the autonomy of being able to take pride in doing your job better as the whole for the whole is where everybody wins at the end of the day. So that's I agree with that philosophy 100%.
Yeah. I as well, and that's particularly true among the millennial workforce group. I mean, there's a why question to everything they do, and our workforce is evolving to that shifting to that paradigm. So yeah, it's very, very true that when people buy
Over the
into
last
what
few
you're doing.
years, I mean, exactly. So how have you seen that change, especially since coming out of, COVID? Have you noticed any significant changes or trends in the field of EH&S that stand out to you, or any evolving to adapt to new challenges or to impact mental health or more future things that we don't know. Because I think that safety used
yeah,
to be this very small thing, and now it's becoming more and more spokes in
right.
the wheel as the world continues on.
Yeah, yeah. I think EH&S has the EH&S folks have multiplied in the wheel because we're really dealing with the people aspect of business when you speak to EH&S. And
Mhm.
the pandemic drove us into the realization that how people think about the business and the place where their work impacts what their productivity is, impacts how they feel about the company, impacts their desire to come to work or not come to work. And so, mental health is on the radar now.
Yeah.
Diversity, equity, inclusion is on the radar now. Technology, because of the changing workforce, is on the radar now. So yeah, I'm seeing companies that maybe in the traditional pre-union or early union days that would see a person as a commodity or as an asset, no different than a machine, now sees people as different types of assets more as resources, and the companies are trying to understand what makes our people tick, what do our people like, what engages them, what causes them to think like owners, so to speak, as
Mhm.
opposed to just come in, do their 8 hours and get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Um, we see a ton, and especially we were just at the National Safety Conference, and just the technology alone is impressive of what's
Yes.
out there. Has Bolthouse Farms embraced any of that as far as this is the new tech, this is the new way that we're moving?
Well, it is the trick that, I mean, it's the trend. As CEH&S is evolving to where technology is significantly increasing as far as importance in the work environment, to the degree that you see it kind of on the software side. And of course, you guys are specifically familiar from the ergonomic perspective,
Hmm.
where you see wearables from the ergonomic perspective becoming a technological advance.
Yeah.
And people are really getting into that. But I think the technology is here to stay. And now we're starting to see technology being introduced in EH&S through artificial intelligence related
Hmm.
activities, particularly real-time location tracking and surveillance and monitoring of certain work areas and aspects. So yeah, I think technology is here to stay, and we need to adopt and adapt it. And even with data management, data tracking, incident, accident investigation, regulatory compliance, et cetera. Now there are apps out there that you can put on your phone, and if you want to know what the regulation is for fall protection, you just click the app and type in fall protection, and boom, the regulation's right there with some recommendations of how to comply. So yeah, technology is a big part of the business. It has evolved to become a big part of the business in recent years, and I think it's only going to increase.
Well, with everything being at the speed of your fingertips these days, it's that crosses, I think, all kinds of different industries, and EH&S
Absolutely.
is certainly no different. So,
Absolutely.
So since we're talking ergonomics, I'm going to slide into ergonomics and OSHA. And there's been some
Okay.
recent updates to OSHA regulations.
Uh-huh.
Ergonomics has become an increasingly important aspect of EH&S. In
Hmm.
Minnesota, for example, there's a new state law, it's not OSHA, that requires all organizations in food processing, meat packing, and some other industries to have a defined ergonomic program where there are a high number of injuries or there may not be. My understanding is that Cal OSHA requires every employer to subject to California's ergonomic standards to establish and implement a program to minimize these repetitive motion injuries,
Hmm.
any other problems they might have, bring down workers' comp cases. How does the impact with the business that you're in and the strategy, the other priorities arise? How does that all come together when it comes to budgeting time?
Well, I think, and you're absolutely right. California requires that if you have, there's the CCR 5110, I think it is. There's the California Code of Regulation relative to ergonomics that says if you have one or more employees that suffers a repetitive motion injury within a year, don't quote me
Uh-huh.
on that, but we can read the regulation if we want to. But there's a standard that says this is the trigger point where you have to then go and implement a repetitive motion reduction program. And so
Correct.
from that perspective, I think the impact on employers, or I think the proactive employees are understanding that we should be proactive in our workplace assessments. That's kind of how I got with you guys, and what you guys have done for us in one of my facilities is
Right.
let's take a look. Let's see what is our ergonomic exposure, because it's not like there's a tag hanging on ergonomic exposures throughout the factory. You have to have somebody who understands the discipline to come in and take a look. And even sometimes I think a mistake that we make is we have laymen try to identify ergonomic related issues, but I think the science has advanced far beyond just lifting, pushing, pulling, stretching, or not stretching. And
Hmm.
so at least, from our assessment, we learned things not only relative to ergonomics, but we learned things relative to other parts of our business. But I think you got to be proactive in doing the evaluation if you're smart, because in Minnesota, as you called out, in California, as I called out, there's a requirement once you have a triggering event, or you reach an action limit. And with that being the case, you don't want to get caught mid-budget
Yeah,
without
exactly.
budget. And so I would be proactive in doing the assessment. I would also be proactive for the potential that might arise, which I'll make sure that I do in years, ahead. I think knowing what the ergonomic requirements are for the area, whether they be city, state, federal, whatever it happens to be,
Hmm.
it only makes sense to budget for the potential in case you have a triggering event, or in case your assessment reveals that you really need to you really need to ramp up your efforts in ergonomics.
Which makes sense because when it comes to budgeting, economic impacts are just those things that you need to have kept in mind. So if you have a significant economic impact on a business, companies can see what 3 to 6 times on their ROI and in business
Yes.
growth when
Yeah,
investing in EH&S. So
that's right.
what can you share as far as insights or experience related to the economic benefits of a strong EHS program? So basically, what's the current ROI on business investments in EH&S, and how does that impact your business sustainability?
Well, I'm seeing, not only from so I'm the vice president at one company, and I own the consulting company, so I get to see a lot of various impacts. And depending on the assertiveness at which EH&S is being addressed within a company, you see an increase in what I call cost benefit analysis, or return on investment. For
Uh,
example, one company that I worked with recently, in fact, and I started doing some safety coaching with them. They've derived a tremendous economic benefit, and I'm not suggesting other companies do this. I think you got to evaluate your business and determine what's right. But when I started working with them, they made the decision as part of the attrition in their company. Their safety director left, and instead of replacing the safety director, they increased the responsibility of a safety technician, promoted that person to safety supervisor, and hired me as a coach for that person. And in the 6 months since they've done that, their incident rates are down 30 to 35%. Their severity is down 25 to 30%. I had a stewardship meeting with them a month ago, and the operations personnel are just as happy as they can be. The employees participated in the stewardship. They were extremely happy. The engagement is increased and they feel a part of it. So, there's kind of traditional safety that says, I'm going to tell you what to do and you do it. That's the dictatorial style. And then there's the evolved safety that's really my approach, is the behavioral approach, where one of the first things we did is went out and asked the employees, how do you feel about safety? Do you feel safe? What are your concerns? We captured all of that. We responded to it. We put in safety suggestion box. We put their questions and their responses up on the television boards throughout the
mhm.
operations, so that they could see, here was my concern and here's what the company did about it. And now safety is one of the things that gets the most traction there. And they've reduced their incident rates 30, 35%. They reduced their severity 25 to 30% in the first 6 months of us implementing this process. So I'm not suggesting that anybody get rid of their safety director. I'm suggesting that the right inputs will produce the right outputs. You could talk to the executives in a company all day long, but they're not exposed to machinery or forklifts on the floor or cold or heat or, they may walk through the floor, but they're not out there doing it. Talk to the professional athletes. Talk to the employees on the floor. Ask them what the challenges are. Ask them what makes them uncomfortable. And using that approach, this is kind of took off there because I'm excited about that. But that's an example of the economic impact of implementing a quality EH&S program.
So along the same line, since you've got a background in consulting, you pretty much just answered this question, but I just want to throw it back out there. So consulting firms staying relevant as far as the ever-changing regulatory environment, would you agree that it's the same kind of thing? You want to stay away from the program component and go more of the process where you kind of get into the field, get everyone's opinions, because that to me, just you're covering all your bases.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree, Cheryl. And I think consulting opportunities are going to increase versus decrease as the competitive environment of business continues to increase. Companies are looking for ways to achieve more in the EH&S risk management realm with less expense and with less resources and with less overhead. And I know from my own experience, I'm an EH&S risk management coach for a number of companies, and I don't have an office on their ground. I speak with the appropriate people frequently. I visit frequently. I understand the business and what's going on in the business incrementally. I understand their pain points, and I help them develop solutions to that. But I'm not on their payroll as a full-time equivalent, which means whatever the percentage increase is for benefits and all of that is a cost savings to them. So I think consultants that really understand how to get in and understand the business, consultants that really understand how to get in and understand the organization's culture and behavior, and then consultants that can delineate very rapidly the pain points are going to be in high demand going forward.
So with culture and behavior going forward, I'm going to lean into philosophy and advice.
Sure.
So you have you have your plan, check, act philosophy, and it's really well established approach in EH&S. Can you chat a little bit more about this philosophy and its importance?
Yeah.
So with Bolthouse or anybody else?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to take credit for that being my ideology, but quite honestly, that's the ANSI Z10 safety management model, plan, do, check, and act. And I have evolved the principles over time into 9 concepts that I use. But I could replace plan, do, check, and act with evaluate, implement, measure, and adjust. Because that's the principle. It just says go in, do an assessment, do an evaluation. Now you gotta be proficient at doing the evaluation, which means you have to have the technical skill and competency.
Sure.
But you go in and you do the evaluation. And once you've done the evaluation, you implement in response to the evaluation. So I found this and I did that to offset that. All right, now I found this, I did this to offset it. Let me measure what the impact is. And once you've found it, you've implemented a control, you're measuring the impact, then you're gonna take further action. If that action maybe go back now and look at it again and see if there are other improvements you can make, or that the measurement phase may say you achieved a 30% reduction in frequency and 20% reduction in severity, but your target was a 40% reduction in frequency and a 30% reduction in severity. Then go back through the PDCA or go back through the evaluation implementation measure and make an adjustment. And so the PDCA has been around for a long time. It's a U.S. based a standard of practice, best practice, and it was from the PDCA that the European standard started to evolve. The OSHA 18,001. I think they're up to 45,001 now. But those European standards actually took their lead from the American standards, and then the Europeans took off and said, well, let's refine this more because they wanted to benefit from the on the profit side by reducing costs that don't have to occur. So I believe in process models. We have our own process model. I also think as we back up to the consulting side, you're not going to get much business just saying, I'd like to help you. You're going to have to go in and tell companies, here's how I can help you. Here's the process model I use. Here's how you measure it. This is the frequency that we'll be sitting down, and I'm either hitting the goals or I'm not hitting the goals.
Right.
And then you're going to get, the decision making's attention, because everybody's got a better mousetrap, right?
Oh, of course. Well, it sounds like you're leaning into it as a more of a proactive approach to handle things before they become an issue versus a reactive one. Because I feel
Yes.
like you're already kind of behind the game if you're reacting versus
That is
getting ahead of it.
100% accurate. That's right. Somebody's already suffered pain. The company's already suffered loss. There's already cost on the books, et cetera, if you're reacting. And that's why, kind of the traditional safety approach of old was to react to what happened. But the more behavioral, cultural-based approach is to identify what could happen and react to prevent it from happening, or be proact to prevent it from happening.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Can you speak to a little bit about what your approach to the 30, 60, 90 days review and the POET programs for new hires and finding new talent?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I have to pay people, they have to be productive in order for me to pay them. And so one of the things that I do is I set up, depending on what position the person's coming onto my team to do, I set up a quality orientation, because the best way I believe to onboard is, it's called EEA. It's my own little model that I made up.
Okay.
E stands for educate, E stands for expectations, and A stands for accountability. So when I bring people into the company, whether it's my company or whether it's the company where I'm the vice president, first thing I want to do is educate them to the process. This is the process we use. These are the metrics. This is how it's implemented. This is how often it's measured. And is this something you're interested in? That starts in the interviewing process, because I want to understand you're not coming to a green field to take whatever you learned in your last year of college and press that out. We're advanced, typically beyond that. And so I don't want you to lose anything you learned in college. I want you to bring what you learned in college and fit it within this process that's a proven process that has worked for years. So let me educate them. Here's how we do it. And then be very clear with the expectation. Here's your portion of the pie. This is what I want you to own. And I speak to them frequently about thinking like an owner. If your department is Department A and it has 3 buildings and 60 people, everything related to Department A and the 3 buildings and 60 people are your responsibility from an EH&S perspective. And my expectation is that you're going to know more about those 3 buildings and 60 people than anybody on this property.
You're the professional there.
You're the professional. You're the subject matter expert. You're the person that knows more about EH&S than anybody over there. And then the third one is just check-ins. So from the PDCA, the check portion is sit down and check and see if the person's meeting the expectation. And so I do that when I hire a person. I have a 30-day check-in. When I hire a person, I have a quality orientation set up for them. I have quality expectations set up for them, and I delineate on the front end. These are the accountability points, so these are the metrics that I'm using to evaluate your impact in the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And what I discovered in the first 30 days or so, I could tell if that person's embracing the challenge in front of them, or if that person's kind of just wanting a paycheck, or if that person's actually cut out for the culture that we have. And within 60 days, I can really tell, because I will have given them projects and I would have given them opportunities to manage within the process. And my goal being, before we get to the 90 days, I need to make a solid conclusion as to whether or not the likelihood of this person being successful is greater or lesser. And if the likelihood of them being successful is greater, we found ourselves a good new employee. If the likelihood of them not being successful, or if the likelihood is lesser, then I'm going to be fair to them and say, really enjoyed meeting you. Hope you learn some things in this 90 days, but I don't really feel like, all the elements are lining up for us to go forward.
So that's actually really great advice, I would say, for anybody, whether they're Bolthouse Farms or someplace else. If your management isn't doing some sort of periodic check-in, I would say as an employee, request to have those check-ins so that you're at least making sure you're where you're supposed to be. Your
Absolutely.
expectations are, yeah, I think that's a wonderful, actually, that's something my father would say to me
Yeah.
with any
Wow.
job that I had. So,
Yeah. Well, I actually do that myself, and I've been consulting. I've owned a consulting company since 2009, Cheryl. And with
mhm,
every one of my customers, upon engagement, I insist that we put marks out there for check-ins because I want to know how
absolutely.
I'm doing. I don't want to work for you for a year and have you tell me in the 11th month, I really don't like anything you've done. I'm not satisfied and have a nice
Yes.
life. I'd like for you to tell
Yeah.
me that within the first 60, 90 days. And so, yeah, I put checkpoints out there for myself. Even when I take a position, I mean, even with my boss now, I schedule one-on-ones uh,
Mhm.
for a couple of reasons. I want to make sure, boss, I'm keeping you up to speed on what's going on in our area of responsibility. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I need some feedback on how I'm doing.
100%. So, with that being said, what advice do you have for whether it's professionals or management just starting out in the world of EH&S, or whether it's consulting? What kind of advice would you give to those people who are getting their feet wet in this industry?
If you're on the owner operator side or the employee side, I would say I would adopt a principle that I learned from my dad, and that principle would be hire slow and fire fast. Hire slow mean evaluate your
Hmm.
own operation, and if you cannot articulate what it is you're looking for, you're being unfair to any applicant that you're talking to. So take the time to be able to articulate what your needs are so that any applicant you're talking to is going to be well aware of what you're looking for. And then take
Right.
the time to evaluate that applicant to determine if they have the skill set, the acumen, and the want to do what you're looking for. And that takes time. You can't do that quickly, or you can, but you're not going to get the ideal results as if you would take the time to do it. So hire slow, go through the process, lay it all out, make sure you're having quality conversations, make sure you've delineated, and then if it's not going to work, that's why I use the 30, 60, 90. You're being unfair. I mean, to be unclear is to be unkind, in my opinion. And so if you're not clear on the expectations, you're being unkind to the person who's supposed to be meeting the expectations. And so when you say hire slow and fire fast, some people roll their eyes and say, man, I don't want anything to do with that guy. No, I'm not talking about on a insensitive basis. I'm talking about on an evaluative basis. Take your time to evaluate the job and what's required. Take your time to evaluate the person and what their capabilities are. Take your time in hiring the person to make sure you're closer, you got a closer match, and you're going to have a good long experience together versus just hiring a warm body. They don't know what you want them to do. You don't know what they're capable of doing. And before you know it, you're going to end up at odds. So, and then if you find that it's a mismatch, then be kind, because to be unclear is to be unkind. If it's a mismatch, sit down, have the conversation, say, I'm sorry, this doesn't look like this is working out. And you should be able to clearly delineate and articulate what's not working out. And if you do that, then you set the person up for success in their next opportunity. If you don't
Mhm.
do that, you can leave an angry and upset individual.
You know what? That is solid advice for, at the very least, wonderful longevity to have people in your company for the long haul. So
Oh, yes.
I
I started
applaud
my
you. That's
company in
definitely the way to
'09.
go.
Yeah, I started my company in '09, and I've only had one person that's not working with me since 2009.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's, yeah, it has to do with being clear on what the expectations are. And that person, I'm so proud of that person. That person actually started their own consulting company, and
Oh,
in a different
nice.
business, so they're not a competitor, but they're doing very well.
Wonderful. Well, see, the good knowledge just goes all over the place. So that's
Yeah,
great to hear.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mr. Daniels, I do want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your crazy busy schedule to join us today. And once again, I had the pleasure of interviewing Vice President of EHS at Bolthouse Farms, Mr. Charles Daniels. So thank you
Certainly
so
my pleasure.
much. And I
Absolutely.
appreciate you being a part of DORN's Injury Prevention Academy. And I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
get you back in soon. I'd love to hear where you guys are at in, like, say, another year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. It's my privilege, and I've enjoyed the conversation. Certainly enjoy working with Dorn, and we'll be available to talk more.
All right, sounds good.